are in Asia. ICANN CEO Rod Beckstrom this week said the domain expansion will reflect the way the internet is destined to change in the coming years.
You're going to see more different languages in domain names, I would predict. And so it's going to look more like the world, and it's going to look less like one individual country. And I think that that's a good thing.
But ICANN's increasingly international focus may not be enough to satisfy governments that resent the U.S. role in internet governance. Those complaints are likely to come to a head this December when the International Telecommunications Union, a UN agency, holds a meeting in Dubai to rewrite legally binding global treaties in such a way as to radically change how the internet will be governed worldwide.
It's extremely serious. It's fundamental.
Kieran McCarthy.
Everyone knows that changes will be made at this UN meeting.
After 250 feet, turn right, Reeds Road Northwest.
The impacts that those changes will have.
The move is
Turn
led by
right.
China, Russia, and India, all of which in one form or another favor putting the internet under the supervision of the United Nations. David Gross, who has represented the United States at other international telecommunications meetings, says UN supervision could jeopardize ICANN's current approach, under which the internet is overseen by a variety of groups. It's called the multi-stakeholder principle.
Government, including the U.S. government, but others as well, the private sector, technical groups, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and others, should all have a say in how the internet should develop.
That's how ICANN works now. But if the internet were brought under UN control, governments alone could control the internet. Some would want to keep it free and open, but not all of them, Gross says.
Other governments, of course, would like to see increased governmental control as a way of suppressing free flow of information or suppressing innovation and changes that the internet brings.
China and Russia in particular are proposing new restrictions on internet activity. Those governments are big movers behind next December's UN conference on the internet. They will be opposed by the United States. Tom Gelton, NPR News, Washington.
From NPR News.
In Mississippi, criticism continues to stream in after outgoing Governor Haley Barbour pardoned more than 200 people. Some of those let go included murderers. That story in a minute and a half as All Things Considered continues right here on your home for the classics and NPR News, 90.1 WABE Atlanta. I'm Dennis O'Hare, happy to have you along Thursday, January 12th. 52 degrees, a mixture of clouds, and in some places maybe even some occasional sunshine.
Support for WABE comes from Holy Innocents Episcopal School, providing 3-year-olds through 12th graders with a balance of academics, athletics, service, and the arts. Holy Innocents hosts an open house on Saturday, January 28th at 1 p.m. Details online at hies.org.
Tonight on PBA 30, part 2 of a series that takes us on an unprecedented tour of palaces that have been part of British royal history for hundreds of years. Tonight, the palace and the art, interior, and treasures that exist within its fabled walls. It's the tour of a lifetime. Queen's Palaces. Tonight, followed by Monarchy, the royal family at work since 9. PBA 30, Atlanta PBS station.
WABE Traffic Center in Tequila on 16 eastbound of Winder Highway. Watch out for an accident. In Decatur on Alderbrook Road and La Vista Road. Watch out for a wreck.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Audie Cornish.
And I'm Melissa Block. Controversy is swirling and a judge is stepping in after outgoing Mississippi Governor Republican Haley Barbour pardoned some 200 people this week. This was one of Barbour's last acts in office. Murderers, robbers, arsonists, and drug dealers are among those granted a reprieve. Jeffrey Hess of Mississippi Public Broadcasting reports now on what's happened since.
In the state capital of Jackson late last night, the judge put most of the 200 pardons on hold. Some inmates, including several murderers, have already been released from prison, and some may have left the state. The Mississippi Attorney General Jim Hood believes the pardons are unconstitutional. He says under state law, letters must be published in local newspapers asking for the pardon.
We're going to start going through the process of determining whether there's any publication on all of them, start serving each one of them, and then we'll bring every one of them in and give them a chance to be heard and show us, did you have any proof that it was published? If they don't, the Constitution does intend to pardon you by forming up a pardon.
Just 21 people who were pardoned remained in prison. Mississippi's Constitution does offer broad clemency powers to the governor. Still, Matt Steffi, a constitutional law professor at the Mississippi College of Law, says the number of pardons is unusual.
This is
At the end of the road, turn left.
Governors in other states, even more populous states, it's not unprecedented, but it's, and especially proportionately a very large number, and it's a large number, at least by comparison to recent governors here in the state.
Some of the people worked as prison trustees at the governor's mansion and knew the governor personally. But in most cases, it's not clear why these 200 were pardoned.
Turn left,
Before this
Union
was
Chapel
successful,
Road
Barber
Northwest.
pardoned just 5 people in his 8 years in office. In a written statement, Governor Barber says he checked with the parole board and issued the pardon so residents could have their full rights restored, such as voting and owning a gun. The action surprised state lawmakers and the new governor, Phil Bryant. They've pledged to alter the state constitution. Bryant says governors should retain their power to pardon.
Follow Union Chapel Road Northwest for 3 miles.
I would think, as governor, I would look at that as if someone, if evidence beyond a reasonable doubt would indicate someone had been wrongly convicted of a crime. And so you do want to leave that narrow opportunity, because that has happened in Mississippi, and we want to be able to utilize that more if that was necessary.
Pardons have outraged the victims and their families, who say they were not notified and now fear for their safety. Sandy Middleton runs a victims advocacy group in Jackson called the Center for Violence Prevention.
I was appalled. Absolutely, I was appalled at what this means and the message these pardons send. The message is that to victims that they can't trust us.
The future of the pardons and the people who receive them is in legal limbo. A hearing is set for later this month to review some of the pardons. If the judge agrees they're unconstitutional, people who still owe time could end up back in prison. For NPR News, I'm Jeffrey Hess in Jackson, Mississippi.
The Supreme Court ordered a new trial this week for a Louisiana man charged with 5 brutal murders. The court found that prosecutors had failed to turn over statements that raised doubts about their only witness to the crime. The case is bringing new attention to prosecutor misconduct that's led to the dismissals of other blockbuster convictions, including the corruption case against former Senator Ted Stevens. NPR Justice correspondent Carrie Johnson reports.
It's not every day that 8 Supreme Court justices throw their weight behind a defendant convicted of busting into a New Orleans home, demanding drugs and money at gunpoint, and leaving 5 dead bodies on the ground. But that's exactly what happened this week, where nearly every member of the High Court ruled Juan Smith should get a new trial. Canon Shanmugam argued the case.
Our client, Mr. Smith, was convicted based solely on the testimony of a single eyewitness. And the Supreme Court, in essence, said that in a case of that variety, where there are contradictory statements by that eyewitness, there is a duty to disclose.
But the district attorney's office in Louisiana did not disclose police notes revealing the witness said he couldn't identify any of the perpetrators. Exactly the opposite of what he testified to in court when he told the jury he recognized Juan Smith. The failure to turn over those notes ran afoul of an almost 50-year-old holding by the Supreme Court in a case known as Brady versus Maryland. The Brady case has come to stand for something big in criminal law, that prosecutors are obliged to turn over any evidence that could help the defense in the interest of justice. But the Supreme Court has heard a few cases now involving violations of Brady by the district attorney's office in New Orleans alone. Not to mention the high-profile debacle at the Justice Department, which walked away from the corruption conviction of the late Senator Ted Stevens in 2009 because prosecutors failed to turn over evidence about inconsistencies with their star witness.
After 1/2 mile, turn left.
In the run-of-the-mill case, it's very hard to know that you didn't get something. And so I certainly believe, from my experience, that the cases that we're reading about really are just the tip of the iceberg, and that there are many more violations that courts and the public never learn about.
Former prosecutors like Peter Zeidenberg say deciding what to share with the defense before a criminal trial can be a tricky process.
It's just an inherently difficult decision for a prosecutor to make because you're
turn
obviously
left,
biased.
US 129, US 441, Highway 24, Madison Road.
Wouldn't be doing it.
And ever since the Ted Stevens fiasco, where the prosecutors themselves became the subject of a criminal investigation and a blistering report that could emerge later this month, there have been a lot of nervous people in the Justice Department worried about the consequences of making a bad decision. Brandon Garrett